Crowd, can you all hear me okay? This is amazing. This is the best crowd I've ever seen in a morning event, and I'm so grateful that you all came out on this cold Friday morning. I'm Laura Gertie, and I'm the past president with the Alva Chamber, and I'm going to fill in for Alex today. If you don't know, her baby is sick, and she's dealing with that, and so everybody please pray for Larson. Kay, thank you. This is just amazing. Great. Yep. Show up and tell them a little bit about Graceful Arts and what you have coming up for them.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out this morning. It's a great turnout. I don't have a head count, but I think this is about the largest I've seen in a good long while. Graceful Arts is the Arts and Humanities Center for this part of the state. We provide arts classes back here in the back. We have ever-changing exhibits out front. We focus on supporting local and regional artists, working artists, and arts educators. Do all kinds of fun things for kids, adults, youth, getting ready for summer camp season. It's always a big time. So come out and see us. That never stays the same out front. We're always changing. Every month, and we kick that off with First Friday Art Walks. So again, thank you for coming. We appreciate it very much, and be sure and get some breakfast.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Okay, now our legislators have been gracious to join us on a busy time of the year and another cold day. So Senator Bryce Marlatt, would you like to come up and say something? Tell us what's going to happen this season.
Well, it's we're probably not going to be writing big checks this year. I can promise you that. It's the budget. It seems like the last ever since. I don't know if it has anything to do with me getting elected, but it seems like every year the budget's a big issue. And then I got named chairman of Energy in December, and ever since I've been named chairman of Energy, oil prices have been dropping. So, they're calling for my swift removal. I can promise you that. But the budget's going to drive the train this year. We're looking at $611 million shortfall on what we can appropriate. Our budget has kind of gotten over the years to where it's a little bit confusing because people are like, how in the world are we having a budget shortfall when revenues look like they're higher than they've ever been? Well, that's the truth. Revenues are higher than they've ever been. The problem with our budget is that we've designated money off the top that never gets into the hands of the appropriators to start doling that out. So it makes it difficult for us. We take percentages and percentage that of certain taxes and fees that come in go to certain areas, whether it be education, roads and bridges, and different things like that. And as we've designated those funds, in order to give agencies and departments the ability to plan long term, particularly with transportation, that was one of the main problems with transportation. Is it's hard to come up with a budget to do these larger projects, to go ahead and start letting bids on bridges and different things like that when you don't know next year if you're going to have the same budget you had. And so that was kind of the goal and the reason we started doing that. Part of the problem was it got a little bit out of hand, and now we're only appropriating, was it 46%, Jeff? 47% of the revenues that come into the state ever see the appropriators. So it really ties our hands on flexibility of being able to move funds in different directions. And when you look at a $600 million shortfall, and you look at all of our state agencies, 12 state agencies receive 92% of that budget. So everybody, is saying, we understand it's a tight budget year, but whatever agency I work for, whatever agency that I'm a part of, or this and that, as long as you don't cut us, we're fine. We understand that you've got to cut everybody else. The problem is whenever you've got 92% of your appropriated funds going to 12 agencies, you can basically do away with the other 8% of the agencies, and you still are not quite there on being able to fund those other agencies and hold them harmless. So there's some other measures in there that give us some flexibility. There's some one-time monies. There's some revolving loans, and there's some other things that we can do to look at filling budget gaps. And we've done that in the past. When you look at our revolving loans and one-time monies that we have available, you can fill a lot of that gap with that. The problem is moving forward, if you start filling ongoing budget expenses with one-time fees, which is something we've done in the past, and it's something that you can do. We just got to be cautious about it because, in my opinion, if you create a habit of, if we don't look at doing some real cuts, then we're creating a bigger budget problem for the following year. The appropriators on the House and Senate side are probably more intense negotiations, not necessarily negotiations, but intense meetings, trying to find, where are our efficiencies, what are we doing that is core service of government, and where are some areas that we can cut. And I think on the Senate side, what you're going to see is a lot of us looking at, line item issues and saying, look, this is what we're going to do. This is we're going to give you X amount of dollars in your budget, and we want you to fund X, Y, Z services, because what will happen, and historically, is you cut one group a certain amount of money, and they go and find the most politically brutal service that they provide, and whether it be meals to elders or something for kids, and they say, look, we're cutting this because the legislature didn't give us enough money, and they do that to try to continue to get as much money appropriated to them as possible. So the appropriations issue is going to really drive the budget. We're going to look really hard at tax credits, incentives that we do, and making sure that these tax credits and incentives that we're investing in are serving a purpose, that we're getting a return on our investment, that it's not just something that was created years ago and we're continuing to do it, and that we're actually getting jobs created, we're getting investment in the state because of these. So because those are costing us a tremendous amount of money. So it is going to be an intense session as far as how we look at the budget, how we look at how we're funding all these agencies, and also us on the Senate side, we are looking at doing a lot of line item issues. That is part of the discussion. As far as transportation, we've made a huge investment. I've got a lot of county commissioners and calling saying don't get into our CR county infrastructure road and bridge program. We're really close. We're about 3 years away from meeting our goals on what we've done there. But at the same time, when you're looking at this kind of a shortfall, I think that the sentiment across the Senate side is, nothing's off the table to look at. Not saying we're going to get CIRB funds or anything from the roads fund, but it's something that we've got to look at. We got to make sure that we can meet our core service needs. So, energy issues. Obviously, we're looking at there's a decommissioning bill. Wind industry is obviously a big investment in our part of the state in particular. And as far as I ran a bill 4 years ago that required for companies who are investing in wind projects in the state to, at year 15, I believe, to file a letter of credit with Corporation Commission, that they have a letter of credit or a bond, that they have the ability to decommission this site if they were to become insolvent or abandon the site. And my concern was then that if we have new technology or for whatever reason they abandon these turbines, we can't just go weld a deer stand on the top of it and keep and be fine. And it's not, you know, one of the arguments that we had back then was, well, the landowner can just take it. They can cut it down and sell it for scrap metal. And I'm like, this is a 300-foot tower. They're not going out there with a cutting torch and letting it fall down. You know, it takes engineers to get this thing down, cranes, different things like that, and it costs a lot of money. But that bill required the land to be restored to its original integrity up to 3 or 4 foot below the surface. There's a decommissioning bill this year, and Representative Hickman, are you the House author on that? It's the pro tem wanted this one, and when the pro tem wants a bill, you have to give it to him. So he's going to run this bill, and it's going to require the investment, a surety bond at year 1 that anybody who's going to develop wind sites, if they have that surety bond at year 1, whenever they start that investment, to make sure that we don't have a bunch of abandoned turbines across the state of Oklahoma. Oil and gas, obviously it's Woods County, Alfalfa County. My district is probably feeling the slowdown as much or more than anybody, it's going to be tough. So we're looking at several different things. We've been in negotiations this week on a couple of different issues regarding it. Energy stuff sometimes is boring. It gets into the details. I had a staff member sitting in there with me. He said, "You guys are talking Greek to me. I have no idea what you're talking about." But we're working with landowners, surface owners, Terry Stowers, Farm Bureau, industry officials, to make sure that we don't do anything to curb investment, but there's a multi-unit bill that would allow us to have larger spacings in 640 and allow people to go to the commission and get larger spacings and be able to drill longer horizontal wells. The problem is whenever you do that, you need to make sure that the royalty owner is protected and that they're getting paid for any sources that are being drained out of their property, and also that the landowners get the proper protections in place, and that we make it feasible for investors to come into the state and drill these longer laterals. Production's great. We all love production. Production creates jobs. There's a lot more jobs on the front end when we've got a bit turned to the right and we're digging holes. So we want to make sure that we're doing that, but at the same time, we've got to make it to where it's fair and that royalty owners and landowners are treated fairly as well. So that's another bill that the pro tem wanted, and I think Representative Hickman is handling that on the House side. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Jeff, and I'm sure he's probably got the budget figured out by now. It's a pretty simple deal, but the main thing to understand on the budget is it's not just a if it's a 10% shortfall, a 10% cut across the board, is that right? Or the right thing to do is to say, what are we doing that serves government's purpose? What are we doing that works? What are we doing that's efficient? and what are we leaving on the table? What incentives are out there that are no longer needed? What incentives, what tax credits are out there that are draining the state that we can end those practices and recapture some of that money to fund core services of government. But even members of the Senate, whenever we rolled out and said, look, it's not as easy as you think, because 92% of the budget goes to 12 agencies. They're like, whoa, man, I didn't even realize that. So it makes it very challenging.
I'm going modern. I'm throwing away the paper notes. I'm here. Well, good morning. It's good to see a good crowd, and it's a nice morning. Hopefully it'll warm up a little bit before the next cold blast comes in. Maybe it'll have some moisture. It is exciting to be here, and it's also great to walk in and see some folks that we get to see at the Capitol on a regular basis, and privileged to have the State Fire Marshal in Alva today. It's amazing when one of his bosses is on the board, how he'll show up. It worked out really well for us, didn't it, Chief?
Kirk's my favorite commissioner.
Absolutely. Kirk's doing a great job on the board, and we're privileged in Oklahoma to have a fire marshal who's great to work with. I know many of you work with him on a lot of different projects, and is very responsive. And Robert, welcome to Alva. We're glad you're here. I don't know why you brought that guy with you, but if you all haven't met Jimmy, you'll enjoy visiting with him. He represents the Saints Medical Group, of course, partnering with Share Medical Center, and represents a lot of different clients at the Capitol. But they got up pretty early in the morning to make the drive up here, and I appreciate them coming up and being here to visit with you all. Another exciting week. Week 3 is over. That means we're 3 weeks closer to adjourning, which everybody's excited about, particularly me. We're getting closer to having the session wrapped up, and as the senator mentioned, with the budget challenges, there's plenty of work to do in the next several weeks, couple of months coming up. But before we get back to session on Monday, the annual Speakers Ball is Sunday night, and the Northwestern University Singers are performing at the Speakers Ball this year. I'm really excited. They're going to come down and be part of that, and appreciate their willingness to do that. But what a great program, and so many of you have heard them, and the talent of that group and their director. They're getting ready to travel to New York to perform, and we're going to get a little preview this weekend, and really, really proud to get to show them off in front of the legislators and other elected officials and guests that will be at that annual event Sunday. So I'm really, really proud to have them part of that show. The senator mentioned the budget situation. We did get our final numbers on Tuesday. The Board of Equalization met, finalized our numbers that we'll start building the budget off of for the coming year. The budget that will go into effect on July 1st. $611.3 million was the number. That's how much revenue we have, less than what our budget was last year. So the budget we passed last year, the revenue available is $611.3 million, and that's the challenge that's ahead of us. There's really two primary things that are driving that. That is the number of layoffs that we've had in the last few months across the state. When people are working, there's income tax that comes out of our checks every couple of weeks or every month that's remitted to the tax commission. And when people get laid off, that money stops coming in. And there have been thousands of layoffs, primarily related to the energy sector, and that's one of the big challenges that's driving those numbers changing so dramatically in the last few months, are the layoffs. The other issue, I anticipated it would be the natural gas gross production tax on oil, on the oil side. It actually hasn't been. The oil price was projected by the tax commission and the budget estimates to be around $57. We've been closer to $47, but they've been kind of in the ballpark, and so it wasn't far off there. The one that surprised me is the natural gas. The estimate that the budget was based on was around $4 natural gas, and natural gas, if you looked lately, has been closer to $2, so about half. And that's dramatic. When you miss an estimate by half, that really creates problems. So it's the layoffs and the natural gas price are really the two big factors that have been driving this. It's very interesting now as you walk around the Capitol and you talk to legislators or the governor or anybody involved in this budget process. I can guarantee you on their iPhone, on their browser, they have pulled up already a site that has the oil and the gas price, and we're checking it at least once a day. And probably most of the agency heads are doing the same, just watching to see if that number is going to come back. And we all hope it will. We think it will, but Nobody knows. I mean, commodity prices are all over the place, and they're hard to predict. There's a lot of people that have made a lot of money guessing right, that think it could be anywhere from 6 months to 16 months where we are in this price range. But nobody knows. It's just like me guessing the wheat price, which I never guess right. If I could guess commodity prices, I would have sold my wheat at harvest instead of waiting and losing money on the deal. So it's a guessing game. But the people that have made a lot of money guessing right think it's 6 to 16 months. So we'll see where we end up on that issue. The rainy day fund does have a little over $535 million in it. That's the good news as we go into this. But we need to be cautious because we don't know how long these commodity prices are going to be where they are. We don't know how long this drought's going to last, and that's the other part that's impacting this. When you look at income tax, when you go through a drought and you have farmers and ranchers who have their income depressed and the energy sector depressed, all of those things combined are creating a lot of this revenue issue. And that's very real. But the rainy day fund does have 535, 36, 537, somewhere in that ballpark, $535 million in it. But because we don't know how long this is going to last, I think we need to be very cautious about just saying, well, let's just take all of that money, put it in, and we're just short a little more, and on down the road we go. We may be in as bad a shape next year, and we may need that even more next year. As the Senator mentioned, the position that the House, the Senate, and the Governor have taken is that everything is on the table at this point for discussion. We're looking at everything, and we'll do that. We can access out of the rainy day fund. It's about $325 million of the $535 that we qualify. There's three different sets of criteria to access the rainy day fund in not quite equal thirds, but three ways to access that. One of those is by the amount that the General Revenue Fund is down over the previous year. And that's about $191 million, roughly, that is available for that reason. There's another $134 million that can be accessed by the House and Senate and the Governor, reaching an agreement that conditions exist that require using that amount. So about $325 million. I do not recommend that we take $325 million out of the rainy day fund this year because we don't know what we're facing next year. And if we do stay in a drought, and if the oil price does stay where it is, we'll need those dollars next year. But can we deploy some of that into this year's budget to help? Absolutely. And those discussions are definitely going on to discuss how much of that you deploy into the budget to offset some of this shortfall. So that's definitely on the table for this session. The other thing that we're doing in the House, and I believe the Senate's doing some of this as well, but I have directed our Appropriations and Budget Chairman to have all of his subcommittees bring all of the agencies back in. We do pre-session budget hearings. The first week of session, the agencies come in and present their budget requests and talk about their needs. But we're going to bring our agencies back in and go through their budgets line by line in great detail of how those dollars have been spent and how they would manage cuts. And we're asking them to present scenarios so that we can look at cuts from 3% to 9%, kind of across the board in any area, because we don't know exactly where that number is going to be, but we need contingency plans for all of our agencies to be preparing for a cut anywhere from 3% on the low side to 9% on the high side. And that way, as the Senator mentioned, there's great interest in legislators in making sure that we line item the things that you tell us are the priorities, to make sure that we don't have agencies that are cutting programs that are very popular with constituents and voters that are very impactful across the state to get the phones to go to ringing, so we won't make those cuts, when in fact there are other things in the budget that could go, that probably need to go, and aren't necessary. But the agencies are good at figuring out how to make phones ring. Everybody's in politics. Everybody's figured out how this game is played. We've not done a good job, I think, in the past of taking those priorities and putting them in line items in the budget where they can't be adjusted, and we will be doing that this year to make sure that those dollars are spent on the priorities. The other thing that we have done is we have empowered one of our committees to go look at the revolving funds. Agencies have over $1 billion in revolving funds in their agencies. Those are basically kind of like savings accounts that they have they've set aside for different things. But there's over $1 billion. A lot of that comes in from fees that you're charged, which when you pay $1 for a tax and $1 for a fee, the dollar looks pretty much the same. I don't know there's a lot of difference in a tax and a fee from government. But we'll be looking at all of those dollars. We used some of those last year we'll probably sweep some of those in as well. And again, every agency has priorities that they probably would like to spend those dollars on, but we all have priorities, and some of those dollars are going to be needed to keep the doors open at the schools and the gates locked at the prisons and all of those things that are core functions of government. So that may mean delaying, as the senator mentioned, some other issues. We're looking at everything, and there's a lot of money out there that is available to help. So you have to be cautious, as the senator mentioned. You don't want to just sweep in all those one-time dollars to put into ongoing expenses, because then the next year you have the same issue. You spent the money out of your savings account. What do you do next month when there's an ongoing expense to pay and you don't have money left in that savings account? So it is a lot of pieces of the puzzle to put together, and it will be a combination of reducing spending, bringing dollars in from different sources. The unclaimed property fund's another example. Last year had, Senator, $80-some million, $86 million, something like that. We took $50 million out of that fund at the State Treasurer's Office. Checked it this week, it's already back to $97 million. So there are some resources out there that we can utilize, but the number is big enough that there will have to be some cuts, and so there will be some pain in this budget. There will be some reduced spending at affect programs and services, and we're going to have to set priorities. But there's not a person in this room that doesn't do that every single day or every single month with your personal budget or with the business that you're operating. You set priorities, and you sort your wants from your needs, and then you figure out what you can afford this month versus next month. When you need a new refrigerator and you like to have a new riding lawnmower, but the mower you have works, the refrigerator quits, you spend the money on the refrigerator and you keep saving for the riding lawnmower. And there's no reason that state government can't do that as well. We did it last year. It's an interesting budget process, and the senator alluded to this. We have created, and it's self-inflicted, and it's something the legislature can fix. It's not easy, or it would have been fixed, but over decades, we have created a budget system that is running a lot of money outside of the budget process for the people that you elect to set those priorities. Decades of earmarks being put in place and programs that automatically get money, and they're now. We passed a $7 billion budget, but there is now $3 billion that's going outside that process that goes directly to state agencies. So there's $3 billion that we never see, that comes out of the pot and goes directly to places that have been deemed priorities over decades of legislators coming to the Capitol. And some of those are very important. Road and bridge projects, that's money that comes off the top. After ignoring that for 20 years, we decided that's going to be a priority, and it is, and that number grows each year. The OLAP program for our colleges and universities to pay for those students that meet a certain income threshold. Below that, make good grades, we'll pay for them to go to college. That number continues to grow. The regents decide what the tuition is and tell us how many students, send us the bill, and we pay it. Doesn't matter what the number is, it comes out very first while there's money in the account. And then whatever's left after all of these things, the retirement systems, all of these things that get off the top money, that $3 billion is taken out. Whatever's left is what the legislature then has to put in the budget. Last year was a great example. We collected more tax revenue as a state last year than we ever have in our history, more than we've ever taken in. And we were cutting $200 million out of the state budget. How can that be? It's because that pot, that the people you elect to set the priorities, is shrinking because of all of the earmarks that have been put in place for other priorities. Now, half of that number last year was repayment on tax credits to the energy industry that they deferred during the recession so that we didn't have to make deeper cuts, so about $100 million in the final payment on that issue. But record tax revenue, and we were trying to figure out how to put a budget together with $200 million less dollars than we had to put it together in the previous year. So that's when you hear the governor or the rest of us talk about changing our budgeting processes. That's the problem we're in. Is there's all of these things that are happening that are forcing us to change priorities and to cut spending and what's left because there's so many dollars. It's not because the economy is terrible in Oklahoma. I'd rather be here than a whole lot of other places. We have some challenges, but we can manage through this because a lot of this is of our own creation and it's things we can fix. The other part of that equation is tax credits, as the senator mentioned. $3 billion that goes outside the budget process. There's another $1.7 billion in tax credits, incentives, and exemptions that we give away each year. $1.7 billion. That includes some things that are very popular with the people in this room. The mortgage interest deduction that you take off of your state income tax return every year is part of that $1.7 billion. Sales tax exemption for a veteran is part of that $1.7 billion. The ag exemption sales tax, all of these tax credits for economic development, for everything from wind power to coal to quality jobs. That includes the NBA players. I mean, there's all these things that have been put on the books over the years, and when you add it all up, it's $1.7 billion. So when I say we can manage through this, we can. It's going to take some tough decisions, but we have a $611 million, which again is a big number for a farm kid from Northwest Oklahoma, even if you say it fast, but $611 million problem. But we have $3 billion that's not coming through the budget system, and we have another $1.7 billion with a B that we're giving away. This is a manageable problem. It's going to take some tough decisions to make changes. Anytime you make changes in the game that's already in place, you have winners and losers. And that's why it's always tough. No matter what we're doing when we're voting, there's somebody is benefiting from that vote, and there's somebody that's losing on the deal. That's just the nature of when you change something. Somebody that's in the game, whatever the game is used to the rules of how they are. And when you change the rules to make these reforms, there are people that are interested in that, and then will show up at the Capitol, and that's why it's tough to make those changes. But as a state, we're going to have a very serious conversation about that. And there's a number of reasons why. Probably the greatest right now that we're dealing with is the corrections issue, a very real crisis that the state continues to face, that we've faced for decades. I had a conversation with Jerry Askins, former lieutenant governor, in the Capitol this week. And she served in the legislature for 10 years before I got there. I served my first term with Jerry, and she was sharing with me some of the things she started working on when she got to the legislature 10 years before I got there. So that's now 20 years ago. They're the same issues we're dealing with in corrections today. We just haven't been able to turn the corner on that, but we're to the point we're going to have to. We're at 118% of capacity now. We're roughly 60% staffed, somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% staffed. It literally continues to be a crisis waiting to happen, and how we have managed to not have a fatal incident in our prisons is just a blessing from the good Lord. I don't know how else to explain it when you have the situation that we have currently in our state prisons. It's something that we're going to have to get serious about. We just don't have the money to continue to lock up everybody we're mad at, and still have the dollars to lock up the people that we need to lock up that we're afraid of. And we're going to have to make that decision of how we manage through this. If we don't, we'll be in the same situation we're in with DHS, where a federal judge sends us a bill every year and we pay it. And you don't have any input on where those $35, $40 million new dollars go every year, because the federal court says it's going to DHS. It's not going to schools. It's not going to roads and bridges. It's not going to health care. It's going to DHS. Don't get the corrections issue handled, there'll be another lawsuit, there'll be another federal judge that simply sends us the bill, and pretty soon there won't be anything left for the people you elect to set priorities for the things that you tell us that you want state spending on, because it's all going to be handled either through off-the-top money given away in tax credits, or a federal judge is going to decide how we're spending those things if we don't get our house in order. Very, very real issues. The corrections issue, probably the biggest crisis that we face, and something that we really need to get our arms around. It's been building, again, for decades, and we're kind of coming back to that point. And it wasn't that long ago when we were under federal control of our prison systems, and here we are again. And so it's a very real issue that's going to have to be addressed. We can manage through it. We did it last year. Went through it, a couple $100 million. We cut 54 agencies so that we could increase funding for schools. Our public schools, and you don't hear a lot of talk about this, public schools, almost $105 million went to our schools last year. We cut 54 other agencies to do that. We did increase salaries of many of our state employees, and particularly focusing on our correctional officers. Again, had to make budget cuts in other areas, but we reprioritized. Even when we were cutting spending, we put more money into our schools, into our state employees, particularly in corrections, into our state troopers, where we had a critical shortage, and our numbers are now coming back up for applicants for the Highway Patrol Academy. Again, core functions of government that you all want somebody to answer the phone when you call. You can't call the Highway Patrol and have the dispatcher say, well, we're busy today, but can you call back next Thursday between 8 and 10? We're usually not real busy. We can send a trooper out at that point. It doesn't work that way. The warden can't lock the gates up at 5 o'clock on Friday and come back Monday and check on the offenders and hope everything worked out okay. It just doesn't work that way. Somebody has to be there. And so we set priorities last year. It required 54 agencies to take budget cuts, but we put more money into those other entities I was really excited. My chief of staff walked in a couple of weeks ago, and he said, the education group's coming back to the Capitol for another rally. I said, oh, that's great news. We cut 54 agencies last year. We gave them $105 million. I bet they're coming to say thank you. That's wonderful news. He said, I don't think that's why they're coming, Mr. Speaker. He said it was something along the lines of, we didn't get what we wanted last year, so we're coming back again. I said, all right, well, we'll see what they have to say when they come this year. But they got $105 million last year when everybody else took budget cuts. Those are the stories that don't always make it out for all of you to hear. And I want you all to be proud of the investments that you're making. It's not me. It's not Senator Marlatt. Those are your dollars, and you're investing dollars in education. You did it last year, and don't let anybody tell you didn't. $105 million. You've invested money in roads and bridges that not only benefits the economic opportunities in northwest Oklahoma and around our state, but is very important for public safety. It's really great for us to get phone calls about construction zones now instead of sorry bridges and sorry potholes. People calling, when is this project going to be fixed? When am I going to be able to get down Highway 64 without driving through construction zones? Those are great calls to get because those weren't the calls we were getting that long ago. It has a tremendous impact on the economic opportunities for our part of the state and for our entire state to have good infrastructure. You've done that. You've invested in those areas after they were ignored for 20 years, and that's something that I want you to be proud of. Even more so, be proud of the public safety aspect of that. There are people this morning that gathered around a breakfast table to have breakfast together, that were together as a family because of the cable barriers that you've paid for on the interstates and on the highways around our state that have prevented head-on collisions. People that don't even know it because the cable barriers have stopped a head-on collision that we're able to gather together today. There are teenagers on a college campus, probably right down the street this morning, that are there because you paid for shoulders on state highways. That on an otherwise rainy day, a teen driver makes a mistake driving, goes off the road, hits a wet shoulder, rolls in the vehicle, and is killed. You paid for shoulders on those roads, and that teen driver went barely off the road, came back on, went on down the road, never thought twice. Otherwise wouldn't be with us. That's what you've done. Be proud of those things. We have challenges in this state, but you have sent people to the Capitol to set the priorities of things that you've said are important, and be proud of that. We've got work to do. We've got to get DHS fixed, and we still have progress there. We have challenges in corrections. We're having those conversations. There are things we can do in all of these sectors of government that we can do better. But be encouraged by what you're already doing. You're making a difference. Oklahoma is a better place to live, work, and raise a family than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And we still can have great days ahead of us if we make the right decisions and invest in the right things. And it requires tough choices. But it's those of you that are here today that are community leaders that are making great things happen in Alva and Woods County and are helping us set the priorities for the state that I'm excited about. So I don't want anyone going to the top of the dome to jump just yet. It's going to be challenging. We'll get through it, but there's a lot of great things going on in this state, and I'm really proud that you've given me the chance to represent you at the Capitol in this role. I do want to say congratulations to these two. Warden, you're moving people around. I know you've been trying to get rid of Jason for years, and you finally did. So congratulations. But congratulations to Jason Bryan, who's headed over as the new warden at James Crabtree Correctional Center in Helena. It'll be great to have his leadership over there. And it's great to have Becky Guffey back in northwest Oklahoma. We'll miss her because she's in the city, and so I get to see her sometimes down there at the state office. But I know she's glad to be back closer to home where she lives and where she grew up, and it's really great to have them moving up in leadership roles, to have northwest Oklahoma people in more leadership roles at corrections as we deal with this. I feel good about meeting those challenges when I know we have people with common sense and with northwest Oklahoma values in those roles. And so congratulations to both of you, and Warden, congratulations to get to work with this team, and I know great things are happening, and thanks for everything you're doing as well. So I'll stop there. We'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any, and talk about the things that you all are interested in.
I do have a question. You talked about the appropriated monies that you were faced with. Are those building funds in agencies, or is there going to be an end to it, or is it just going to have to be looked at?
On the agencies we appropriate to, the dollars we appropriate to agencies, that's everything. That's operations, salaries, building maintenance. I mean, I mean, fire marshal's an agency director. He could probably talk even more than I can about everything those dollars are used for. But it's everything that he needs and our other directors need to run your agency, from salaries to health care to equipment.
Paper clips, gasoline.
Say that again.
Paper clips, gasoline, pencils.
Well, I guess I was asking, like, the roads and bridges, you said, we haven't taken care of those over the last 20
Right.
years. We put more money to it. Will there be a time when we get caught up, we won't have to put
There's
so
a
much?
cap on that fund, and Senator chaired the Transportation Committee for a long time, and he can probably talk more about what that cap is. But we're getting closer to that cap of
Next year.
their funding will max out.
Next year, I believe it's next year we hit that cap, and then so we'll be where we need to be, and then by 2018 we hit all of our goals on our bridges. We had 1,900, I think it was 1,900 bridges when we started this program. By the end of this year, we'll be down to just under 400 that need to be addressed. Obviously, it's always a moving target because you've got traffic and things like that. But yes, the cap will be hit, I believe, next year.
Is that the 8-year plan that they talk about?
Yeah, and the 8-year plan is constantly a moving target as well.
Okay.
So I mean, every year you're putting more stuff on the 8-year plan to try to do your thing. But the bridge funds was something that we, whenever we realized that, hey, we're number one in the state in deficient or in the country in deficient bridges, and people are dying because of this. We've got a bridge that's collapsing on the eastern half of the state, and obviously we've had a lot of investment out here, but that's when we started the program to try to get designated funds so that they could start their planning.
The plan is always, they're always looking 8 years ahead, because by the time they do right away and utilities and all that get to construction, there's always, so as this year is completed, then there's another year added at the end. So they always are working 8 years ahead. So every year there's another year of projects added at the end when they complete that first year. And it's been a great tool. And in fact, I believe that's why the legislature has invested so much money, is that the Department of Transportation came in and said, if you give us X amount of dollars, we will do this, and we'll do this over this period. Here's the plan, and they did it. And when someone comes in with a plan and says, here's what we can do if you'll invest these dollars, and they actually perform and do it, and you can see the results, I think that's why it's been so popular, not just with legislators. The only reason it's popular with legislators is because it's popular with the public, and it's things that the public wants done. And I think that's why they've been so successful. Is they had a plan, and they did what they said they would do.
And they told us, this is what we're going to do. We'll come in every year. You hold us accountable for, if we're not doing what we say we're going to do, you hold us accountable. And we do the meetings every year, and they're showing us where the dollars are going, what they're doing, and they can show you an end product. I think the bridge north of town here is on the plan for next year to get started. So we've had our benefit in the northwest part of the state, fortunately, because for a lot of years we didn't get anything out in the northwest part of the state.
Well, for a crowd this big, they're
I'm
very quiet.
I've got a 2-year-old baby at home, and I'm just jealous of how quiet this little guy is.
He's our chamber mascot.
Yeah,
He comes to all of our special events.
We did have a lot of visitors. Several of the county officers were at the Capitol yesterday for the County Officers Day. Lynn has been down for the Oklahoma Press Association event. Was that this week or last week? I can't remember. That it all runs together. Todd Holder was down for a long-range capital planning commission meeting. He's doing a great job there as we look at our assets around the state that we've not managed, our state-owned buildings around the state. And I don't want to get him started. He can do a whole program on that if you want him to. But how our decades of not taking care of our infrastructure, and now we've got to figure out, it's not just the Capitol building that's literally falling down around us, but it's state buildings throughout the state, whether it's DOC facilities or DHS or the veterans facilities. Trying to deal with that. I know Todd had a board meeting. I appreciate his willingness to serve there, because that's been a tough issue, and doing good work there. So it's always good to see people home. Danny was down at the Capitol. Got to see him this week as well, It's always good, particularly during the week and during tough budget sessions, just to see friendly faces from home and be reminded of why we're there. Because Jeremy's coming in all the time telling me what his clients need. Like, well, that's great, but you don't vote for me. You don't live in my district. But
I do. He's my advocate.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, good to know. I'm going to start running his stories by you and make sure that they are what you really want. I never know.
We did have the county commission or the county agency or elected officials for the county there this week, and my office was just packed, and I had some of my members that they're like, "Gosh, what in the world do you?"
A bill on our side to move some of these tax incentives down to the county level and let the county commissioners, in consultation with all of you who see them on a regular basis, to make some local decisions on incentives, things that the state simply can't afford to continue to pay, primarily because they've been so successful. Our manufacturing tax credit's been incredibly successful in terms of economic development, but the cost is growing so much that we can't afford to continue to sustain it. We're the only state that reimburses counties and schools for a gain that they get on property values when a new manufacturing entity or a wind farm moves into that county. And so we have a proposal that we're working on again to move it down to the county level. That's why it's so important that we have good county elected officials, and why it's so important for you all to be involved in county government. Hopefully we'll be putting some of those decisions at the county level, where Woods County would decide the economic incentive package for a business or industry that you were trying to attract. Currently it's a 5-year 100% exemption on property tax on that new investment. Excuse me. So you have a pasture out there that's paying X amount of dollars that the schools and counties are getting, and it's always going to pay X amount of dollars whether anything's built there or not. But when some new industry comes in and builds a wind farm on that pasture, or a General Motors plant, or whatever it is, whatever that gain in value is, the state picks up the difference. The company doesn't have to pay property tax for 5 years. The state pays that new amount, and that is an incentive to get them to come to Oklahoma or to invest in a manufacturing facility or wind farm, whatever it might be. But that's been so successful that amount we're reimbursing on the gain, again, you're still getting the pasture you got if nothing ever shows up, but the amount we're paying on the gain is getting so large that we're, again, having to make cuts in other areas.
Production tax credit on top of that.
Yeah, that's true. There's a wind production tax credit. There's other credits that they get in addition to that. But our thinking is that program's been successful. We don't want it to go away. The state can't afford to continue to pay on the gain. So let your county commissioners decide, in consultation with your school officials and other people in the community, if we want that wind farm here or we want that manufacturing plant in Woods County. Then the county will say, you keep paying on what that pasture's been paying us, for the last 10 years, and we'll pick up the difference for the next 5. We'll waive your property tax for 5 years, or we'll waive it for 3 years, or we'll waive 25% of it for 4 years. I mean, whatever it is, the local people will know better than anyone what package they need to offer to get that business or industry to locate here.
And if a company doesn't want to invest in their local school district and things like that, then it may not be the best fit anyway.
That's right. But that becomes a local decision. But you're not losing anything, because you're still getting what the pasture paid if nobody shows up and the cattle are still grazing out there. But it gives you a local tool in terms of economic development for your county commissioners and the people that you see every day to make those decisions locally. Allows us to do what we need to do in the budget, and it keeps an economic development program in place that, quite frankly, after we're gone in a few years, probably could come off the books because it's not sustainable. I'd rather fix those things and give those tools to your local entities to use and let them decide. And if Woods County offers a 5-year 100% exemption on property tax, and some other county offers a 3-year plan or a staggered plan or whatever, and their county doesn't get it and you do, then their county commissioners answer to the voters over those issues. But anything we can do to get those decisions on the local level and help us with our budget, but keep those tools in place that are successful are things we want to do, and make your county commissioners more involved and you all more involved in determining your own economic future.
One thing on that reimbursement program, as well as the way they structure those, is they can depreciate those projects out over a 10-year period. So they've got a depreciation schedule on 10 years. So by the time it gets, when we're paying the large portion of it, so by the time it gets to that 5 years where they're paying it, a lot of that's depreciated out, and the tax liability is a lot less. And what we're finding out is that there's a lot of protests going on when they come on to start paying themselves. So there definitely needs to be a fix there, because if there's no protest when the state's reimbursing the county, and then whenever it's their turn, it's a lot less. And not only that, but we're going to protest, and now our local community and the county and the schools are held up in court and not receiving that money for a little while longer. It's problematic, and it kind of goes back to that what I said earlier. You know, if I've got a business and I want to invest a bit in make that type of investment in Woods County or Major County or whatever county it is, I want to make sure that the community I'm investing in is also receiving a benefit, so that my employees' children are getting the best education. You know, so it's not just about here, what can we do to get the money? You know, it's got to be a right fit as well.
It's amazing no one cares what the property tax is when they're not paying it. We're picking up the tab for them, but the minute that 5 years is over, that there's protests. And so a lot of things we need to work on our tax code for them. Anything else?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
They both said they'd be able to stay around for a while, so if you have private concerns or just thank them for coming, we appreciate their service. You'll have some time with them still. So now we'll move on to our Member of the Month. Let me get to my notes, sorry. Washburn Ford Lincoln is our Member of the Month. It was established as Washburn Motor Company in Winoka in 1946. Lyle operated a Kaiser Fraser franchise. I'm probably not saying that right, Corey, I'm sorry. In 55. No. He also sold used cars and operated Easton Oil. He operated a Studebaker franchise from 57 to 66 and continued to sell used cars and changed to Gulf Oil. In 70, Lyle's son Kirk purchased a Ford dealership in downtown Alva. In 73, the new building they're in now was completed and they moved out there. In 81, the Lincoln and Mercury franchise was purchased. In 2001, Corey came back to join Kirk at Washburn. In 2010, they updated their name to better reflect that they had added new products to Washburn Ford Lincoln. In 2013, they started thinking about the remodeling and making those plans. And I don't know if any of you were out there for their grand opening, but it's wonderful. And that was completed in 2014. For community service, Corey is one of the handful of people in Alva that I do know pretty well from serving on chamber with him. And he was a past president. He served on the board for a great deal of time. And even when we're past president, you're ready to get off and not do anything. He didn't even do that. Corey is still serving for us on the finance committee and the public relations committee. He is involved in our chamber and our community. He serves on the airport board. He's a member of Rotary and active in the fireworks team that put together the Rotary's presentation. He's in charge of the Student of the Month program for Rotary, and he also heads up the large fundraiser for the Alva High speech that's called Drive for Your School that raises around $5,000 each year. Thank you, Corey, for your community service and your family's business. Afterwards, do you have anything you want to say, though, about?
No, thank you. We appreciate the honor.
Okay. Some chamber members, please stick around and come up and let Jody and Lynn take pictures in a few minutes. We have quite a few events, but I want to stress this one, so if any of you walk out on me, I want to make sure you've seen this one. Wave your hand, Jody. Jody in the back has these cards. This is for Alva Day at the Capitol. You've probably got it in your email, but as you just saw, we need to represent Alva well at the Capitol and go. These cards tell you what the events are. 7 o'clock on the one evening is a reception, and then the whole day at the Capitol and a breakfast. And she also has the information to get hotel rooms, and just be sure you're part of the Alva block to get the best rates and be part of that package. But please pick some of these up from her and get registered and let her know there's going to be enough people going to support Alva. Northwestern's theater productions, February 19, and Hall of Fame banquet the 21st. Graceful Arts, I think Kay told you some of her things. She's got Corks and Canvas. Molly Murphy's Night at Champs by the Rotary Club. Quite a few of our mayor candidates are in the room today, so you can chat with them about the upcoming election. And there's a Meet the Mayor candidates February 25th. Cherokee Strip Museum has champagne and chocolate the 26th. Giving of the Green, March 3rd. The Friday art walks that Kay mentioned are here. The next one's March 6th. The Art Society, and then again, the Alva Day at the Capitol and Northwestern's concert series is March 10th, Perpetual Motion. So just check with Jody or anyone at the chamber if you have any questions about those events, and they keep a calendar. And with that, thank you all for coming out. It was a wonderful crowd.